Welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. We're here with Bob, our resident MLB guest expert, and we are down Yancey, who couldn't make it tonight, and he left us with a memory to look at before we really dig in today. And so, obviously, with Bob here, we're going to be talking a lot about baseball. We're going to be talking midseason report, how teams are doing, what surprises we've been seeing, and just things like that to try and get the ball rolling, so to speak, back toward the final stretch towards playoffs in September, October. Before we do that, as I said, Yancey left us with a memory, and we're gonna show it. So I remember when this happened back in when was it? 2001, I think. So let me pull it up here and see if it works on my computer. Okay, so 2001, before high definition. So we see a kind of grainy. This is Randy Johnson, pitcher for the Diamondbacks, I think, at the time. But let's just roll this tape and see what happens.
Oh, man.
So let me stop sharing. It's a very quick memory, and one that okay, good. Okay. So I don't know, Dustin, Cody, if you remember that from the actual time. I remember on SportsCenter. I was about 13 years old, maybe, when that happened. So, and I remember seeing it, and I remember it being like the funniest thing that I had ever seen at that point in my life. Obviously, we don't condone killing birds on purpose. And I don't think how much of a luck or bad luck do you have to be able to hit a bird at the exact moment where it crosses the plate, just as Randy Johnson is throwing a 100-mile fastball, and to hit it so perfectly that it like tears apart the bird like a piñata. It's insane to think how lucky, unlucky, fortunate, unfortunate, whatever word you want to throw into, but just a weird, crazy stroke of coincidence that could have happened. But let me turn it over to you guys if you have anything to say about that moment, in whatever order you want to go.
I'll start just because, I mean, I would have been 6, so even if I did watch it, I wouldn't remember it. But I highly doubt that I actually saw that. It's only been, just watching it on YouTube or highlights like that. But I remember the first time I saw the highlight, I was probably crying from laughing for about 3 or 4 minutes. And I just couldn't believe. I think I was laughing and then thinking, like, this has got to be fake, right? Like, there's no way this is real. And I kind of tried looking into it, and sure enough, it's real. It's just unbelievable. It's hilarious still. 23 years later, still hilarious. So I'll move on to Dustin or Bob.
It's funny to me how many funny clips Randy Johnson is involved in, because besides this one, you also have clips of Larry Walker and John Kruk trying to hit against Randy Johnson. Neither one of them wanted anything to do with them. Larry Walker put his batting helmet on backwards and went around and hit from the right side because he wanted nothing to do with Randy Johnson. And then there's another one where Johnson actually got a hit and came around first base and stumbled and fell, completely flat in the earth. And I forget whether it was later that day or the next day, there was a chalk outline of a dead body in the base path where Randy Johnson, had landed. So there's a lot of good Randy Johnson stuff out there. He's not even the first Hall of Famer to take out a seagull, though. Dave Winfield took one out at one point during his career, and I'd have to go back and look. There was some kind of legal concerns, though. So some organization wanted to punish Dave Winfield. It was a throw from the outfield, and he happened to nail a seagull, and who knows? But anyway, but yeah, even on the list of Randy Johnson funny clips, the seagull one just grabs your attention.
It speaks to how powerful of a throw that Randy had. It's you think of it, force is mass times velocity squared, and the squared is on the velocity. So the faster you throw, you square that. And so it's this little baseball that I don't know how much a baseball weighs, 6 ounces, 8 ounces, maybe a little more, something like that.
It's a little under 6, I think. Yeah.
Going so fast that it hits a bird and the bird just explodes. It's because the square is on the velocity, and so it's just incredible that the bird definitely outweighed the baseball, but because of the speed that Randy Johnson can throw it at, it stood no chance. And so it's just incredible, and just kind of fun that it just poof, gone.
I think on the broadcast they called it a crowd, or what did they say? It was in a sea of feathers. Yeah. I mean, Randy Johnson, he was 6'10", I think. Right? Yep. So a huge pitcher, and I mean, I've been hit by a baseball, and by a person who's not an MLB pitcher, probably threw it 40 miles an hour, but that hurts. And so I certainly wouldn't want to trade places with the bird or anyone else who's been hit by a pitch by Randy Johnson. So.
Which is why Larry Walker went around to the right-handed batter's box. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that lighthearted moment, let's turn our attention to what this season has been so far. So I did put some questions into a text to Cody. I'm sure that he shared them with you, or I hope they did. But okay, good. In addition to that, I just kind of want to check in on on the divisions and some of the teams within them, and ask the questions as they come up within those divisions. And so just checking in right at the top with the AL East. I mean, right now there's been a lot of surprises elsewhere, but in this division, it's kind of the way that we've thought it so far. Orioles at the top and Yankees right behind them, right? So,
yeah, the Yankees were making a good push at one point. They actually were in first place. Baltimore's reclaimed it now. I think that the way the Yankees run hot and cold, I think they're going to be, they're definitely going to have one of the wild card slots. But they're starting to have issues now. Stanton is injured. They still don't have Garrett Cole back, the real Garrett Cole. But they have 2 legit MVP candidates, and the only reason probably more people aren't talking about Juan Soto as an MVP is because Aaron Judge is just destroying everything in sight. So he's at this point, I would say, that as long as they can keep riding him, if they can get some of the other pieces back, I still pick Baltimore to win. I think they're steadier. I think, if we weren't talking about Judge and Soto for MVP, we'd be talking about Gunnar Henderson. He's having a tremendous year. and he's really driving things at the top of the lineup for them. Corbin Burns has been a good pickup. I think I still think Baltimore is the class of that division. The other team that's kind of interesting in there is Boston, who has struggled in the division the last couple of years, but right now Boston is sitting in the last wild card slot. So they could make things interesting. They're they're only 6.5 out in the division. So I think Boston could be an interesting team to watch. Definitely for the the wild card race coming down to the end. I think they're going to be in it.
Yeah, that is the surprise, I guess, from that division. I think all of us, except maybe Dustin, picked the Red Sox to finish last in that division. So, Tampa Bay, Toronto are both out of it right now, both under 500. But anything, Dustin, Cody, about the AL East?
I mean, just kind of echoing. I mean, Baltimore just we predicted that they would be, a real deal, and they're showing it. They're proving it with those two players you mentioned, Bob. But New York's right behind them, So I think it's, although it looks like Baltimore, the way they're playing, it's that they will likely, be safe, get where they want to get. They can't let up a single bit just because New York's literally nipping at their heels.
Okay. The way that we did the preview was jump to the other East, the NL East, and so that's what we'll do here too. Give us some whiplash a little bit, but so in the NL East, again, we knew that the Phillies and the Braves would be at the top, but we kind of thought it might be the other way. Phillies are pulling away from everyone, really. In the whole NL, but whole National League, but Atlanta's still there too, right? So
they are, but I hemmed and hawed on this one. I did say Atlanta. I think we all acknowledged that Philly was going to be good, but we didn't know that they were going to be this good. The two things that really I think have impressed me about them are the way they've been able to overcome key injuries. Trey Turner was out for an extended period. Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber just came back off the IL. But whoever has been in the lineup has picked things up. And one name that really probably was not factoring into a lot of people's thinking at the beginning of the season was Alec Bohm. He's really having he's a legit all-star this year. And so, but one way or another, they've managed to pick up for each other when somebody's been out. The other thing that they've been able to do is keep a solid rotation game in and game out. They've got 3 10-game winners on the staff right now. Ranger Suarez and Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and those guys have stayed healthy, and they've been pitching lights out. And that combination really has helped Philadelphia just take advantage of some struggles that Atlanta had early on. They've put 8.5 games between them right now, and I don't see that changing. Philadelphia is right now. Philadelphia is the best team in baseball. Period. So.
Yeah, as I was saying, they're pulling away from everybody. They're the first team to 60 wins, and so yeah. Dustin, Cody, NL East.
How are you feeling about Philly's chances in finishing in the World Series? They've had a few rough goes, either getting there or almost getting there.
I feel like this is one of those times where, you know, the sting from the other close calls is going to teach them something. I think they've got the maturity now to. I think they're going to be the NL representative to me, and I at this point I would pick them. You know, combination of offense, pitching. You know, I just think they're the best team. You know, they've earned it.
I think for me, it's just another question as well, but more about Bryce Harper in particular. Now, that's a name I've heard around the league for a long time. He's got to be getting up there in age, right? What's the typical age of MLB? Like, what's the typical retirement age, and where's Bryce Harper in that range?
He's actually probably he's right around 30. I forget exactly.
He'll be 32 in October.
Yeah. So he actually is, you know, in the heart of what would normally be his prime. So, you know, he does every now and then have, you know, issues with injuries. He played, he was pretty all out the first few years of his career, had some injuries, you know, crashing into the fence and things like that. I think he's kind of learned that. He's playing first base now, and I think that adjustment has worked out really well for Philly as well. He is a leader on that team. He is, you know, he's playing really. He's, you know, if he is able to, he's the one player in the National League. I'll put it this way: if he can stay on the field the rest of the year, he's I think the only player in my mind in the National League who could make anything like a serious run at Shohei Ohtani for MVP. So.
Okay. So then he's been in the league for probably a decade now. Then does that sound about right?
Yeah. Yeah. Going on.
And so then he started out red hot, like as you know, like because I was going to say 10 years sounds about how long as I've known his name out there, and I guess I figured that he probably became big, you know, 3 to 5 years in, you know, started becoming really good then, and so I guess I was off there. I didn't realize he was that young.
Well, he was All-Star his very first season. He was 19 years old. So
yeah.
His first season. So, yeah.
So,
he's at number 12, looks like 13. So, yeah.
For which, I'm sorry?
I'm just doing some math. 2012 was his rookie year. So this is
okay. Yeah.
He's in number 12 years.
Okay.
And then
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Atlanta's going to make it to the playoffs. It doesn't help that they are missing 2 really big pieces in Acuna and Strider. Thankfully, Chris Sale so far has been everything that was advertised. So I see Atlanta going in. I don't see them making, you know, a deep run in the playoffs. The one other team that's kind of interesting right now in that division is the Mets. For all of the angst that, you know, people in New York have, you know, with how the Mets are doing, they're over 500. They're not a serious challenger for the division title this year, but they are holding the last wild card spot right now. So, you know, I think they are slowly but surely kind of getting the ship righted there, and I think they are definitely going to be a factor, you know, at the end of the season.
And then we at the preview we talked about Miami being a potential wild card sneaker, and they've almost lost twice as many games as they've won. They're even behind Washington, so that's a problem.
Yeah, no Miami this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, jumping up to the AL Central, I have some questions about these teams, but there's really there's three teams that are close to each other up there, but it's Cleveland that's at the top, and all of us thought it would be Minnesota. They're about 4 games out, but so those two are there. But the surprise is Kansas City. So
Well, actually, before we get to Kansas City, I would actually call Cleveland a surprise by a half game. They are the best team in the American League right now.
that's true, right?
And so, that, and they are, I'm not sure I can put my finger on why. Jose Ramirez is having a good year, and Stephen Kwan is doing a lot of good at the leadoff spot. They, and some of it has to do with the division they're playing in, but Cleveland is, I think, after a rough year last year, they are finding their way back into it. And yeah, Kansas City is for real. They're a half game out of the wild card standings right now. Bobby Witt is, they signed him long term, and he's one of the signings that looks for all the world like it's going to pan out. Yeah, they have a lot of good going. I don't know that I pick them for wild card this year, but but that would be interesting if for the first time in who knows how long the American League Central gets 3 teams into the postseason. It's been a minute since that happened.
Yeah. And if I was prepared, I would pull up the soundbite from our preview where Cody said, "I'm feeling something about Kansas City," and
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
So nice.
Self high five.
Yeah, Cody, you start working on your tarot cards. So yeah. But yeah, Cleveland, Minnesota, Kansas City, all 3 up there. All 3 have won 50 games so far. The question that I had that you've already addressed was, is Kansas City the real deal? And you think when you're 20 or 30 games in, you can ask that question. But at this point, when you're almost 100 games into the season, I think the answer is pretty clear who is good and who is not at this point.
Yeah, and it's not that I necessarily am picking against Kansas City. It's a good ball club, and I think they'll they're in a good position to continue progressing. It's just the teams that are ahead of them right now. The 3 wild card slots right now are the Yankees, the Astros, and Boston. So one of those 3 teams would have to take a step back. I think they're all more experienced. I think they're all just a little bit better equipped to make a run for the postseason. Kansas City in a small market setting is probably not in the same kind of position to pull in needed pieces, the way the Yankees could, or Boston or something like that. So it's more just a question of who's ahead of them than any questions about their quality. They're going to be there in the coming years, no question.
Right. The only other question I had kind of brings in a team from the NL Central as well. Looking at the 2 Chicago teams, and so this is kind of bridging the NL Central a little bit too. But we picked the Cubs. Both you and I did, Bob. At least I don't remember about Dustin and Cody, but we both picked the Cubs to win the NL Central. They're last in that division. It's still kind of a close division. There are only 9 games between them, but still they're last. And the White Sox, the way I worded it, looked like the worst team that has ever played baseball ever. And so, what is the deal in the Windy City?
they, you know, they've started cleaning house. They just haven't brought in the future pieces yet. You know, Dylan Cease is now in San Diego, and you know, Tim Anderson is in Miami, and you know, Lance Hendricks is out, and you know, one thing and another. Lance Lynn is gone. They have a couple pieces left that they can still work with, but they're just they are in last place now. They will be in last place at the end of the year. There is nothing happening this year in you know, on the south side. North side is interesting. The big issue, I think, with the Cubs has been that they cannot protect the lead to save their life. You know, they've got 17 blown saves, which is not, it's not the worst in the league, but it's at the top. And if you know, you take 17 blown saves and you factor that into being, you know, 9.5 games out, you know, that changes the landscape significantly. You know, and you know, it's really interesting how it's Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and Chicago are all within a game of each other, you know, at the bottom of that division. You know, I still think the Cubs can settle it down. But you know that, but I don't see the playoffs this year, mainly because there are two surprises for me ahead of them. I did not see Milwaukee staying at the top of the division, but they are, you know, they're, you know, especially, you know, managerial change and things like that. But sometimes, you know, that puts a chip on your shoulder and you want to go out and prove yourself. So there might be some of that going on. But Kristen Yelich has taken the step forward. Rhys Hoskins has been a nice pickup for that team. I question maybe, you know, the quality of the pitching through the rest of the year, but so far they're getting it done. And then surprise number 2, right behind them, is St. Louis. They were in last place in mid-May, and they have played themselves now to a plus 500 record. They have the number 2 wild card slot, and you know, it's interesting how they're doing that because they actually have a negative run differential. So, you know, I don't know how you go from last place to, you know, playoff contention with a negative run differential, but I think it's probably speaks to, you know, how deep a hole they dug for themselves at the beginning of the year. And, you know, they're doing a really nice job of getting it out of it, you know, getting themselves out of it.
Yeah, you see that happen sometimes in other sports too, and it's those you win the games that you win by 1 run or 2 runs at the most, and then you get blown out in the games you lose, and so that speaks to, is this a good team or finishing close games? But if you don't get close, do you give up for the 4th inning or something like that? So. I remember the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, finished with a winning record, but were outscored by, I think, almost 40 points for the season. So it's a weird situation for that to happen in. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so in Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, we talked about those 2 teams. Detroit up in the AL Central, just to mention them. I think we kind of talked about them as being a sleeper, but they're close to 500, but still they're probably too far out to seriously consider at this point.
Yeah, I think it, you know, the 3 teams that we've talked about, you know, Cleveland, Minnesota, Kansas City, that's where your playoff push is going to come from. It's not going to come from Detroit this year.
Dustin and Cody, anything about either the AL Central or the NL Central?
I think I have one question for our expert. Out of those
All right,
two
so Scott, I
divisions-
hope you're listening.
Out of those two divisions, the two central divisions, I want you, Bob, to name one player as not as a casual baseball fan, as someone who doesn't know a lot about baseball. Who is one player that I need to watch and why?
Ooh,
I know that's a lot of teams, so just try to sift through one and think of one.
all right. My knee-jerk reaction, because he is the best player on his team and has been for several years, and is, doesn't probably get a lot of the recognition that he deserves. I'm going to say go to the Cleveland Indians and watch Jose Ramirez. He's just very steadily plays good defense. He's a run producer. He's an interesting personality. He's a catalyst for them. I think he's definitely underappreciated. So, and now if you want to go for the other name, I guess would be Bobby Witt in Kansas City. He's as a young up and comer. I think he's definitely got a great career ahead of him. But I respect what Jose Ramirez does in Cleveland year in and year out.
Okay. Over to the AL West. We talked at the beginning of the year. Obviously, the World Series champion, Texas Rangers. The big question, kind of spanning again the AL West and the NL West. Both World Series participants are both under 500 at this point. They're close. They're both close, but they're both under 500. What was it, a flash in the pan kind of season for both of those teams that? Or what's happening that both of the World Series contestants are kind of back fighting for playoff spots rather than pulling away?
Texas took a little while to get the offense going. I think Marcus Semien and Corey Seager are kind of picking up the pace now a little bit. Josh Young was a key player for them last year. He was out for an extended period. But I think the biggest challenge for Texas is, if you look at the injured list in their starting rotation, what other team has people like Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom and Tyler Mahle? I mean, those are three really key pieces, and there just hasn't been anybody to step into the void. So they're okay. I don't think they're a playoff threat at this point. And then as far as Arizona is concerned, they're sub 500, but somehow they're still only like a game and a half out of the wild card race. So they could do some damage, but they also have had some key people who have struggled. They brought in Eugenio Suarez, who was supposed to be a big bat in the middle of their lineup. He's had issues. Corbin Carroll has taken a huge step back. He was the he was the one setting the table at the top of the lineup last year, and with his speed, he was causing all kinds of trouble. But when you're hitting 211 and you're not getting on base, you can't use that speed, and there's a trickle down effect. So Arizona, yeah, I don't see them I don't see them jumping anybody into playoff contention. They may play better the rest of the year, but I'm just not feeling it from them this year.
We'll get back to the NL West in a second, but going back to the AL West, I had an initial question probably 2 weeks ago about why Houston is struggling, and then the last 2 weeks they have not struggled at all. They've done really well, back above 500, back in the playoff conversation. So question null and void. Houston's back there. Seattle is the one that's on top of the division right now, and we did pick. It was really a conversation between those three teams that are right now at the top. But can Seattle do enough to hold off the steam that Houston is playing with right now?
Honestly, I don't think so. Seattle, I'll go back to run differential on them. They're sitting at the top of the division with a plus 16 run differential. So, there really isn't anybody sparking the offense, pitching. It's just, I think the one thing maybe helping Seattle going forward is, they probably have an easier schedule through the rest of the year. But I would not be at all surprised to see, Houston jump them. It's only a 2-game difference right now. Houston has all the momentum. Altuve's back. Houston's figuring some things out, and I think they, I'm pretty sure I picked Texas to win the division, but I think Houston is going to be there at the end of the season.
Yeah, and what's the word I'm looking for? Important, I guess, about that one is there's probably, looking at the records, only the winner in that division is probably going to the playoffs, and so it's either going to be Houston or Seattle. The other team stays home. So
yeah, I'm kind of thinking right now, your wild card teams, you're going to get 2 from the East, and you're going to get either Minnesota or Kansas City. But I think the West could just get the division winner this year, and that's it.
Okay. AL West, anything from Dustin or Cody before our last division?
I mean, I was just going to say, I think even if, especially Seattle, if Seattle is the winner of the division and goes into the playoffs, they'll probably lose that first game to whoever they play. Honestly, especially if they're going to end up going against teams like Cleveland or Baltimore, New York. I don't see them going past them. Houston might be a different story, but either way, Seattle, if they get through, congratulations and go home.
Yeah, you get to raise one of the small pennants in your stadium instead of the big banner.
Yep.
Okay, NL West. Yes, we talked about the Diamondbacks at the beginning of the season, but none of us actually picked them to win the division. We all picked the Dodgers, and that's happening right now. Dodgers 55 wins, 7 games above the Padres, who are in second place. And we talked about this division being a potentially stacked one with 4 teams, and Giants and Diamondbacks are both below 500, but just barely. And so 4 teams that are playing fairly good baseball, and then there's the lowly Colorado Rockies.
So maybe they can play in a special series with the Chicago White Sox and see.
Yeah. I have to see who's won the most games between those two.
LA
is still the class in that division. San Diego has taken a step forward. I think Dylan Cease has been a good pickup for them. Some of the other people that we expected to be, real contributors in that rotation, though, I mean, when you're at the halfway mark and you have 7 wins from Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove combined, that doesn't bode well. I think, I still think, they could make some noise, but in the National League, I think we have. I think we pretty much have the division winners. I think Atlanta. I'm going to say probably the Mets and St. Louis are going to be the wild card teams this year. So I'm not sure I see either Western Division getting more than the division winner. So.
Yeah, I mean, right now San Diego's in the conversation, but yeah.
They are, but St. Louis I like because they're kind of on that a little bit of the momentum run that a few years ago when the Nationals won, they were in last place in May. And I'm not saying St. Louis is going to win the World Series, but that you get teams every year who can make a move like that and who can ride that into something really positive. So I think those are my wild card picks at this point. And we'll see, but yeah, the NL West is not as strong as it has been in years past, at least to me.
Yeah. So revisiting our World Series matchups and picks, and seeing if they still hold the same amount of water. Let's start with you, Cody. You had the Dodgers beating the Orioles. I mean, it looks okay at this point, but what do you think?
I mean,
oh, by the way, Dustin, you had the same exact pick, so you can weigh in.
It's possible, but at this point, I would switch it. I'd say the Orioles are beating the Dodgers. But I mean, my original prediction is still possible. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at, we talked about the Phillies, being there instead, and yeah.
Yeah, I had the Dodgers beating the Astros, so just a little bit different. I could see the Astros getting there still with the momentum they're on. Again, I'm going to jump on the Philly train at this point and say it's gonna come in between LA and Philly in that NL championship. But yeah, so whoever wins out of LA and Philly is beating Houston in the World Series, in my opinion. So, and Bob, you had Atlanta beating Baltimore.
Yeah, I will stick with NL East beating Baltimore, but I'll at this point I think without Acuna, without Strider, that's a lot to ask of Atlanta, and Philly just has all the pieces right now. Given where things stand at this point, I think it's Philly. I think Philly beats Baltimore. I'm very curious to see who makes moves by the trading deadline and what moves those are. I guess there's always a chance that somebody could fill a critical hole, but given where everything is right now, I mean, Philly, when everybody is on the field for Philly, they're a monster.
Yeah. Okay. So that does it for the MLB preview. We still have about half an hour left, and so Bob, you can we don't want to kick you off, so you can certainly stay and talk other sports if you want, or if you want to go take care of other things, whatever you want to do. But,
I got a baseball question.
I'm happy to reveal my ignorance. Let's go for it.
Dustin, what did you say?
I got a baseball question for you. So so Oakland is moving to Vegas, right, in a few years. Is it's what's proposed, right?
It's been talked about. I thought it was a done deal. I don't think it's as done a deal as some people think it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the plan anyway.
But I saw a proposed like drawing sketch, whatever, of the stadium that they would build in Vegas if they got the team. And I don't know if you've seen that, but it looks weird. They've got like a half covering over it. Looks kind of like an amphitheater. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, if you'd seen it or not, or what you think.
I haven't seen anything recently. I let me check on my Google machine and see what.
That's exactly what I was doing.
So.
Scott, you might even be able to share it. No, you don't have.
Yeah. No, I'm opening my Google or Bing, whatever this share screen is. Is this what you're talking about, Dustin? If you see,
Yeah.
it's just a little ring there.
It almost looks like the Sydney Opera House.
A little bit, yeah.
So
all these different renderings, but it looks like they called it something, a fixed roof ballpark to be built on the Tropicana, now closed Tropicana strip on the strip.
It's gonna be right on the strip, which is an interesting place.
Allegiant Stadium, where the Raiders play, is right off of the strip. So I mean, they're all right there. But...
yeah, I like the fact that I was talking with another guy. That over the last 20 to 30 years, I think baseball teams have really put a lot of thought into their stadiums. I went to the new Comiskey Park when it opened up in Chicago, probably, what is that, 30 years ago, something. And it was very functional, but no, no charm, no aesthetics or anything. The next stadium to open up after the new Comiskey was Camden Yards. And Camden Yards is just an incredible venue for baseball. They put a lot of thought into, everything from the seat views to the, they incorporated the warehouse wall in right field. The fan experience is tremendous. They have Utah Street right out just past the right field stands, and people go walk on Utah Street and get barbecue and things like that. I mean, it's a tremendous experience, and they really have designed the last few stadiums with fans in mind. So this one looks like it's kind of very much in keeping with that. And I don't know if that roof design has anything to do with if there's a particular functional use for it, or if it's just for the look of it. But hey, if they're able to convince the powers that be and get Oakland down there and field a team in a ballpark like that, it definitely fits in Vegas. So
it gets me to think of a couple of things. First of all, what happens if they hit a ball that just hits that part of the roof and falls down? Like, what's the rule for hitting part of the roof? Because I know some other parks have a little bit of that feature. But so, and the second part of the question, are the Athletics good enough to be able to hit a ball that high right now? So,
well, that they're probably part of that same end of the year tournament with Chicago and Colorado. But I don't know. There's some pieces moving around right now. In addition to having teams, like Oakland change cities, they're also talking about expanding into a couple of cities, and so as things go along, it would be interesting to see if Vegas becomes an option to move an existing franchise, or would they instead pivot? If the issues with Oakland drag on too long, would they pivot and try and get an expansion franchise in there? I don't know what the long-term strategy for MLB is, but they, I'm sure they're taking all those things into account, and just see how they feel about where the best expansion possibilities are.
We talked somewhat recently about the hypothetical global expansion of the NFL, looking at more localized expansion possibilities in the MLB. Some of the cities that have been proposed as possible locations include a return to Montreal, where the Expos played for a while, Nashville, Portland, Oregon, Sacramento, Salt Lake City, San Antonio, and then obviously Las Vegas, like you said, if the Athletics don't move there, and then Charlotte, North Carolina have been kind of the 8 linked ones. But knowing how baseball is a global game, is there any, or is it a kind of a horrible idea that the MLB could expand outside of North America?
I could see going north to Montreal. I could see going south, maybe as far as Mexico City, because Mexican baseball has a long tradition there, and that could be a really interesting move if they ever decide to take that on. Given the number of games that Major League Baseball plays, 162 games in a season. In some cases, you could be, visiting another ballpark, a couple, 3 times throughout the year. Expanding any farther than that becomes, a logistical concern. And nobody's going to want to fly across to, London and play a game there. And then come back and then maybe have to go to, London again for, how does that work into, playoff schedules and things like that? I think, I think it would be very, exhibition, or, I don't know, maybe exhibition is the wrong word. But, having those kinds of, one-off games or series, you can get away with that. But when it becomes a regular stopping point throughout the season, I have a hard time seeing it going much farther than, like I said, Mexico City. But that said, I think Mexico City would be a really interesting possibility if they ever decide to consider it.
Right. Okay. The last couple of things wanted to talk about, and Dustin, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but you put some questions in about the Olympics that are coming up here, and wanted to maybe hit some of those. Olympics start in a couple of weeks. Dustin, do you want to lead this last segment?
Yeah, so I always love to watch the Olympics, and there's such a great variety of sports and events, and so just kind of wanted to do a quick, around the horn of, what are everyone's some of your favorite Olympic sports that we see, and maybe what's something exciting that you always like with the Olympics. Um, for me, a couple to lead off. I of course love basketball, and so I love to see, for example, just a couple days ago, did a exhibition between USA and Canada, which are possibly the two best teams. With just full of NBA talent. So that was exciting to watch. Love that basketball. But then, excuse me, I love that boxing is in the Olympics. I think that's going to be great to see and see boxers from all around the world compete against each other. And then some of the triathlons are neat, and I love to watch the gymnastics. Whether it's someone like Simone Biles or somebody else that can just do incredible things using their own momentum to get 10 to 15 feet in the air, just off their own momentum. Is incredible for me. So, what are some thoughts from you on some of your favorite Olympic events to watch?
I'll go first, and I always preferred Winter Olympics to summer. I always liked the watch the figure skating and the what do you call them,
The speed.
speed skating. Thank you. Yeah, the speed. I liked watching those. But Summer Olympics, talking about those in particular. I also like the gymnastics. I like watching the different events in gymnastics. All of them are fun in their own ways. The bars and the own free, whatever you call it. Like you can tell I'm not very versed in what these are called, but the one where they're in the one box and they do just a bunch of flips and things like that is always cool. The track and field is also a favorite. Watching how fast these humans can run, like, is insane. And then I liked the volleyball, and then kind of the little not as known one. I really like watching field hockey, lacrosse, that kind of thing. I covered some of that in college and learned about the sport, and so it was fun to watch how good these players are, especially Olympic style. There's a few others that I like, but those are the main ones for Summer Olympics for me.
Go ahead, Bob.
I don't know that I have a strong preference, but for an event that I watch, Olympics in and Olympics out, it's I kind of enjoy the overall experience. One thing I think I am going to be following a little more closely this year, though, especially in the aftermath of the Copa America debacle, is what happens with the with the U.S. soccer team, and how is, because this is traditionally, a little bit of a younger crowd. They're going to have, I think, 3 overage players that, they're allowed to bring with them. But, I think the U.S. really took a hit at the Copa, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the younger players step up, especially, with kind of the added pressure that this, whether fairly or unfairly, puts on them.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've been watching a little bit of the Copa America, and what's amazing is USA has a population of 350 million people, and there's countries with 20 to 30 million that put together a much better team than us. I mean, how can we not find 10 to 15 guys that can play really good soccer when we have 10 times the amount of people to choose from? And it's just unfortunate. So
it's because people here think that football means something else.
So
yeah, I mean, you look at America, and there's the 3 biggest sports were all USA born sports, and so it's just an interesting cultural thing.
So I'd say for me, first off, I think I have to side with Scott that I do prefer Winter Olympics over Summer Olympics. But in Summer Olympics, I think some of my favorite things to watch have been swimming and diving, as well as and it just blanked. Apparently, it's not a favorite of mine if I can't remember it now.
We'll come back to you if you remember.
Well, anyway,
I did one. Oh, are you not done, Cody? Sorry.
well, you can go ahead and I'll come back to it, but go ahead.
Okay. I did want to mention that I haven't been a big fan of Olympic basketball for several years because it's usually been a case of U.S. domination and it's just not as fun to watch. Obviously, that's changed in some recent years where there's really good international basketball. I am excited as a BYU alum to see Jimmer Fredette play in Olympic basketball. He had his chance in the NBA, a 10th or 11th overall pick. Obviously, is the whole Jimmer Mania deal. What'd you say, Dustin? 4? What does that mean?
4th overall pick.
No, Jimmer
4th.
wasn't 4th.
No? Okay.
No. I think he was 10th or 11th. But I'll look that up in a second. But anyway, watching him play at college firsthand was fantastic. But obviously couldn't kick it in the NBA more than a couple of years. But he's a star in China, and so I'm glad that he gets a chance to represent the USA on a high level here. And I'm excited to see how much he plays and what he can do.
Yeah. I like to watch some of the unique sports that you don't often see or aren't often as popular, but then you see the best in the world do them. And overall, new sports are being added to the Olympics every year, every series, I guess. And so some recent ones, weightlifting, boxing, surfing, skateboarding, and then brand new in 2024 is breakdancing. And so it's going to be exciting to see all these new sports. And so I'm especially excited to watch skateboarding, which was brand new in 2020. And it was so great to see all these great skateboarders that we also all came to know, especially Tony Hawk, be kind of the coaches and the guides for the new up and coming young skateboarders who are competing, representing their country in 2020, and it's back again in 2024. So I'm excited for that.
So going back to me, for some reason I still couldn't remember it, but I had a question that I wanted to bring up, and this is kind of going off of what you're just saying, Dustin. Before I get there, though, it was my week to do a pardon the interruption kind of thing, and I didn't come up with a whole lot except for on the spot. I kind of came up with a question that is going to be controversial, and I think, but this is a question I have kind of going off of that. And I really wanted to ask this, but with some of the more extremely popular sports, example, basketball, soccer, and then maybe I hear flag football might be one coming up. So football, with those sports being very popular and being played, widely watched, especially the basketball and soccer. Would it be feasible and a good idea? And now hear me out, to cut those from the Olympics and to actually have the Olympics focus on those that are not broadcasted very often, those who don't get as much of an option. Because, basketball is played, almost year round if you think about all the other, leagues that are going on. Same with soccer. And there's also the World Cup, that happens, that includes the world in that. Would it be, and I don't have an opinion on this, but would it be better for those athletes in those sports that don't get exposure to be having more airtime when the big, popular basketball, soccer, football are cut, and focus on everything else? And perhaps, I'm sure Olympus has got to be a big business. Obviously, it's worldwide, and get these individuals in these sports that don't have a lot of airtime the money that they deserve.
My initial reaction is that most people watching the Olympics uh, basketball and those types of things don't feature as the number one thing to watch anyway. They're kind of they're kind of mid-level of importance. Like everyone watches the Summer Olympics for gymnastics and for the track and field and for those big ones that get that are essentially Olympic sports. People watch the Olympics for the Olympic sports, and so I don't think that cutting these popular sports outside of the Olympics will do anything because they're not as popular when you get to the Olympics. That's my initial reaction. But I don't know if I'm off. Dustin's nodding his head. But
yeah, I think I agree. I think I'll say different words to say it, but kind of to Cody's point that 98% of Olympic athletes 10 years from now are going to be working a totally normal job and their gold medal is going to be hanging in their room, right? It's but that's we should stop thinking of, oh, athletes are the rich people. That these people that are doing these Olympic sports are the best in the world at whatever they do, whether that is gymnastics or field hockey or trap shooting. Like, they're the best in the world at it. And I think that having a sport like basketball, soccer, flag football, whatever, in there will only bring more people. I'm imagining, the Joe Schmo who thinks football is the only sport that's cool will actually start to watch, and then he'll actually see that these extremely talented and amazing people can do so many incredible things and really bring more people into the broader sport market.
another quick thought that I just had is who it was Kawhi Leonard that just decided not to play in the Olympics. And who's taking his place? Derek White, I think. Anyway, you think it obviously isn't as important to basketball players to play in the NBA players to play in the Olympics. Can you imagine a track and field athlete saying, "Nah, I'm not going to go play. I'm not going to go run the Olympics." Like that's pretty much been their whole life to get to the Olympics. Kawhi Leonard, obviously, his whole life has been playing in the NBA. Olympics, if it comes, it comes. So it's just a big mindset difference, and so I don't think it obviously isn't as important to a lot of big NBA stars. Some of them, I'm sure it's really important, but a lot of them have already hit their dream of playing in the NBA, and the Olympics is just an afterthought.
You have any thoughts, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, I think I look back at my viewing experience with the Olympics, and the events that I think I've always enjoyed the most are the ones that, I don't typically see. If I'm usually I only get a chance to watch, the luge, once every 4 years. I only get a chance to watch, some of the sprint events once every 4 years. It's just not those are not things that are, I think, quite as common to see outside of the Olympic cycle. So because they're rarer, I think they have a greater interest for me, more of a draw, more of a, I definitely, get more involved in watching, a giant slalom than I do watching, a basketball game with players that I will see, in another month playing against each other again, just in different colored clothing, So I think, I like the tradition of the Olympics. I think there are some core events that over the years are really, kind of, deeply identified with the Olympics. And I like the idea of featuring those. And I would not miss, Olympic basketball personally. I think I tune into the Olympics for other things. what ABC, Wide World of Sports, used to call the constant variety of sports. And
I like all your answers. I think that my mind is kind of along the same way, that people don't value those sports in the Olympics as much, and so my mindset is it could actually be done away with. It could be cut, and it wouldn't be a big issue. And then it has more slots for, as Dustin was saying earlier, new ideas, breakdancing or whatever it is, as to take these slots so that these people can show their talents. I know that Dustin made a good point about people who think football is the coolest sport in the world. It brings them to it. That's the only argument I can see for it. But other than that, I think it might be a good idea just to consider cutting. I mean, I'm more interested in watching. I'd rather watch the NBA than Portugal play Brazil in basketball. I just don't know about that. But and then lastly, I just remembered sand volleyball. That's the thing. I love to watch volleyball.
Okay, well that's just a sampler, because we'll certainly talk more about the Olympics as they continue through the middle of August. But that kind of brings us to the end of our podcast today. Next week we're back on Wednesday, so the 17th. Dustin will not be here, and I think the other three of us will cover some college football stuff, I think is the initial plan. Dustin, we'll talk throughout the week over, offline, whatever thoughts you want to have about the new 12-team format and predictions and stuff like that. Send it to us over text, and we can read your stuff as well. But I think that'll be the main plan next week. Thanks everyone. Does anyone have any last comments?
Go Phillies.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Bob. And I'm sure we'll see you again in whenever baseball's in the playoffs. I'm not sure when that is.
Probably November at that point. Yeah.
November?
October, November. We'll see.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone.